Hello and welcome to The Fragrance Report, a podcast where we discuss the intersection of culture, history, and fragrances. I'm your host, Anya, and today's episode will be quite fascinating because we're delving into 5 vintage perfumes that you can still buy today. We're going to dive into the story behind each one of these fragrances, talk about the brands behind them, evaluate the cultural significance of each of these perfumes, and dive into who was famous for wearing these creations. If you are new to this podcast, I publish a new episode every Wednesday on YouTube and Spotify. Not only that, but you can also find regular fragrance content on my YouTube channel. I publish videos 5 times a week, Monday through Friday, and I also do publish content on TikTok and Instagram under the username ANECHKAFRAGRANCES. For those of you who are coming back, welcome. This is the first time I actually do have a mic set up, so the sound is hopefully a massive improvement compared to what we had earlier. So do provide feedback if you can on what you think of the sound. I am happy to adjust it as needed. So without further ado, I am really excited about the content of this episode, so let's dive into it. I'm going to kick things off talking about my favorite fragrances of the week. I have this initial one here, Sora Dora's Mallow. This is one of my all-time favorite orange blossom fragrances, and it happens to be my favorite fragrance from Sora Dora specifically. This has notes of violet, marshmallow, orange blossom, raspberry, and a whole host of other notes that essentially create this pillowy, soft, gourmand, violet marshmallow fragrance that lasts all day, so you get a terrific value for it. I wear this constantly and it's one of my favorite fragrances of all time and definitely one of my favorites from this brand. One of my firm favorites over the years has definitely been Choco Musk by Al Rahab, and I find myself wearing this now more than ever. This is such an easy fragrance to wear. It's a powdery chocolate vanilla perfume, and the oil version stays on so long. They also have an eau de parfum version as well, but I do prefer the oil. I keep this in my work bag and I've been wearing it constantly. And I know I've been mentioning this combination for weeks now, but one of my favorite fragrance combinations has been Banana Republic's Vintage Green, layered with By Corel's Sharing Concept. I truly wear these fragrances constantly, and as you can see, I don't know if you've noticed or not, but the dents do appear to have been increasing because I genuinely love wearing these fragrances. Did you know that most, if not all, the fragrances we're talking about in this podcast episode do not smell the same as they used to? That is because they have likely been reformulated many times, and this is due to a variety of different reasons. First, there are restrictions on ingredients. The International Fragrance Association, IFRA, has imposed bans and restrictions on certain ingredients due to allergen risks. For example, natural oak moss was restricted for its potential allergies, and it is a really common ingredient in fragrance. The other reason a lot of these fragrance notes have been restricted is because of ethical and environmental concerns. Fragrance notes such as musks or civet have long raised questions about the ethical nature of gathering these notes, so their natural form has been restricted or eliminated altogether. Another reason why a fragrance may get reformulated is due to cost and availability of certain fragrance ingredients. As the cost fluctuates, as the availability changes, a brand may make the decision to replace that ingredient with a synthetic component or to reformulate the fragrance altogether. And finally, the last reason why a fragrance may get reformulated is simply due to changes in consumer preferences. There is a reason why we talk about so many fragrances being so potent and so loud in the 80s and 90s, and now those very same fragrances have been reformulated to accommodate for the change in public perception. Those are all the reasons why perfume may get reformulated. Obviously, a lot of fragrance brands don't like to talk about a fragrance being reformulated, but it's good to remain aware of why a fragrance brand might choose to reformulate or even discontinue a fragrance. It just might be more economical for them to do so, and sometimes people's preferences do change. Let's kick things off with one of the oldest fragrances still available for sale today, and that is Acqua della Regina by Santa Maria Novella. This is considered one of the oldest fragrances, and its origins trace back to 1533. This was created by the Dominican monks of the Officina Profumo Farmaceutica di Santa Maria Novella in Florence, Italy, and it was initially intended to be a gift for Catherine de' Medici upon her marriage to Henry II of France. The name of the fragrance directly translates to Water of the Queen, which adds to its prestigious background, and it's still available for purchase today. At this time, Italy was not a unified state. In fact, it was divided into different kingdoms, Florence being one of them. The Medici family were a powerful banking family that ruled Florence for a really long time, and Catherine de' Medici was hailed from Florence specifically, and when it was found that she would be married off to the French royal family, the monks decided to prepare this gift for her. Now, the monks were known for their expertise in scent, distillation, medicinal herbs, things of that nature, and they created this special fragrance for her. This scent was known to be one of the first alcohol-based perfumes at a time when most fragrances actually had an oil base. The alcohol in the fragrance added to the refreshing quality in this perfume, and Catherine de' Medici would then go on to have a heavy influence in French perfumery. A little bit more about the actual formula of the fragrance. Acqua della Regina is a citrus-based eau de cologne concentration, meaning it's a little bit lighter than some other fragrances. It is a fragrance that was inspired by the Florentine countryside, and the brand remains faithful to the original composition created back in 1533. To this day, the notes are still listed as bergamot, lemon, and bitter orange, a heart of neroli and lavender, and then a base of musk and woody accords. And this fragrance has long been characterized for its simplicity, for its freshness, evoking the scent of Mediterranean citrus. The brand has remained faithful to the history behind Acqua della Regina. Even the bottle design is a vintage-inspired apothecary glass bottle with a gold label and a script that is very reminiscent of the original design. The coat of arms listed on the bottle is a nod to the Medici family, which was a big component in the creation of the fragrance. And finally, the packaging of the fragrance is inspired by 15th century manuscripts. As I mentioned before, this alcohol-based fragrance was one of the first of its kind, so its success and impact still resonates today. Even though we still characterize Acqua della Regina as an eau de cologne formulation today, it was not until several hundred years later that the first cologne was introduced. 4711 Eau de Cologne is known as the mother of all colognes, and it's maintained its classic formula, albeit with a few tweaks, for 230 years, and it is a fresh and herbaceous fragrance that is still available today. The story of this fragrance begins in Cologne, Germany, with a Carthusian monk who gave a secret recipe for an aqua mirabilis, which is a miracle water, to a young entrepreneur named Wilhelm Mulhens as a wedding gift. And I might be mispronouncing this terribly, and if I am, I do apologize, but the formula of this fragrance was originally supposed to be used as a health tonic, but it later evolved into a fragrance. Now, the fragrance wasn't initially named as a cologne. It was actually sold as a wellness elixir by Mulhens starting in 1792. However, during the French occupation of Cologne in 1794, they introduced a new way of numbering the streets, and so the Mulhens building received the number 4711 on Glockengasse Street, and the name stuck and it became a big symbol of the brand's identity. Unfortunately, early in the 19th century, due to changes in health regulations, Mulhens was prohibited from marketing this product as a medicine, and then he officially changed this product to become a fragrance, evolving into the cologne that we know and love today. This fragrance is known to have notes of bergamot, lemon, and orange at the top, a mid of lavender and rosemary, and then a base of neroli and petitgrain. This is a fragrance that has a low concentration of 3 to 5% of perfume oil, making it an eau de cologne formulation. Keep in mind, this fragrance was initially marketed as a wellness water, right? Now, this, of course, isn't necessarily the case if we look at it through a modern lens, but back then, they really saw this as a fragrance or a product that could cool the senses because of the concentration, because of the scent, and it was known to be a refresher. And finally, it was also known to be a fragrance product, or rather a general use product that you could use to refresh household linens or just produce an air freshening effect. Similar to Acqua della Regina, the bottle design of 4711 has remained relatively consistent over the many years since its creation. It's known to be an iconic turquoise and gold bottle, and this is a perfume that still maintains its vintage look and appeal, and yet it's still really affordable today. Let's fast forward in time and talk about another fragrance that's iconic and still available to this day. You might recognize this name. It's Arpège by Lanvin. This was originally created in 1927, and it was made to be a really iconic floral aldehyde. Around this time, we were getting our first aldehydic fragrances, such as Chanel No. 5, which I've mentioned in a previous episode, but Arpège was also a fragrance that did have floral and aldehydic notes, as was becoming really common for the time. Similar to Chanel No. 5, Arpège was also a fragrance that was created by a fashion house, and it was creatively designed by Jeanne Lanvin, inspired by her daughter Marguerite, and it was supposed to be a celebration of love that mother and daughter had. It was initially designed to be a 30th birthday gift for Marguerite, and the name Arpège is derived from the French word for arpeggio, which was a reflection of Marguerite's love for music and the fragrance's general blend of all the notes that was kind of compared to a musical score. Created by perfumer André Frazy, the original 1927 perfume composition included top notes of aldehydes, bergamot, peach, neroli, and lily of the valley, a heart of rose, jasmine, ylang-ylang, iris, and coriander, and then a base of sandalwood, vetiver, musk, vanilla, and patchouli. The design of the bottle was created by Armand Albert Rateau, and he was a renowned French designer and close friend of Jeanne Lanvin. And this glass bottle was known to be designed with a gold cap featuring the emblem of Jeanne Lanvin and her daughter Marguerite in a tender embrace. Originally, this fragrance was considered to be a more warmer interpretation of an aldehydic fragrance, at least compared to Chanel No. 5, but it was later reimagined or reformulated in 1993. Notable fans of this fragrance include Jackie Kennedy. She was rumored to really love wearing it. Other famous names include Audrey Hepburn and Grace Kelly. Both are famous icons who are rumored to have really loved this fragrance. Another famous fragrance is Christian Dior's Miss Dior. You might recognize this perfume as one of the most famous fragrances in the world, and it is still available today, even though it has been reformulated many times. Originally, this fragrance was inspired by Christian Dior's sister, Catherine Dior, and she was known to be one of his muses, and he created this fragrance with her in mind as a way of showing his love and appreciation for his sister. The name of the fragrance was inspired by a spontaneous moment of when Catherine Dior walked into the Dior boutique, and one of Christian Dior's other muses, Mitza Bricard, actually exclaimed, "Oh, here comes Miss Dior." So the name kind of stuck, the nickname stuck, and this transitioned to the fragrance that was later created in her honor. At this point, we have to take a look at the general state of the world in 1947. Now, World War II had just ended, and World War II was known to create a time where simple items like fabric, like clothing, food, was rationed, and it was very difficult to get key items like that. So Christian Dior was known for celebrating the end of the war by creating these beautiful feminine silhouettes, these big skirts, without worrying about the rationing that had been so prevalent during the period of wartime. Also, another really key component to note is Catherine Dior was actually an active member of the French Resistance. So when we think about Miss Dior, it represents femininity. It represents grace. I love the fact that Christian Dior created this fragrance inspired by his sister, who was known to be this beautiful feminine muse for his fashion collections. But also, she had this whole other side to her as an active member of the French Resistance during wartime. So it adds another layer of meaning to a fragrance that's so known for being a symbol of feminine elegance and feminine nature, but we really do have a whole new perspective on this fragrance when we understand the fact that Catherine Dior had such a significant role in the French Resistance as well. Now, the fragrance itself was known to be a green chypre fragrance, and this fragrance was known to have top notes of gardenia, galbanum, clary, sage, and bergamot, a mid of jasmine, neroli, rose, and narcissus, and then a base of oak moss, patchouli, labdanum, leather, and sandalwood, as well as amber. Now, it has been reformulated several times. So the fragrance that we see and know today has gone through several iterations of flankers, reformulations. So we can't really smell the original one anymore, but its legacy still remains powerful even today. Finally, I do want to talk about Charlie by Revlon. Did you know that this fragrance, originally created in 1973 and now currently found in discount stores like Burlington or TJ Maxx, was actually a symbol of female empowerment back when it was first launched? Charlie was originally created by the brand Revlon, which you might know today for their makeup products, but they designed this fragrance to reflect the spirit of the independent, confident woman of the 70s. This perfume began to create a cultural phenomenon in the 70s, and it was known as one of the top sellers at the time. Now, the perfumer was unofficially credited, but he was known to be Francis Camille, and originally Revlon wanted to create a fragrance inspired and created for an independent, career-driven woman. And the name Charlie was supposed to be a playful way of playing with these unisex themes and ideals, and the original ad campaign for the fragrance showed a beautiful woman striding down the street wearing a pantsuit during a time when a lot of women still were expected to not wear a pantsuit, even though this was rapidly changing. The original Charlie fragrance, created in 1973, had notes of bergamot, lemon, hyacinth, and green notes, a heart of jasmine, rose, lily of the valley, and coriander, and then a base of oak moss, sandalwood, musk, and vanilla. This was described as a bright, shining, confident, sparkling, bold scent with green notes. The original tagline for the ad campaign was as follows: "There's a fragrance that says bold and confident. There's a fragrance that says Charlie." The original face of the fragrance was Shelley Hack. Now, this was before her role in Charlie's Angels, and as I mentioned before, she was depicted as striding confidently in pantsuits. And at the time, most women in fragrance ads specifically wore ball gowns and light feminine skirts, and this was considered a departure from the norm. Furthermore, the fragrance actually deviated from traditional perfume ads at the time even more by focusing its marketing on independence and sophistication rather than seduction. By 1977, this was the best-selling perfume worldwide with over 1 billion in sales, and unlike other luxury perfume brands of the time, Charlie was priced as an affordable fragrance from the beginning, which significantly contributed to its widespread popularity. Now, there are so many other flankers and versions of Charlie that we may know of and can reference today, one of which was Charlie's Blue, Charlie Red, Charlie White, Charlie Gold, Charlie Silver, Sunshine, and Pink. There are so many different versions of it. I remember when I was first getting into fragrance, I actually did try buying Charlie Blue and Charlie Red, and I think I did enjoy the way they smelled. I just wasn't wearing them on a regular basis, so I ended up getting rid of those bottles. But Charlie became known as a symbol of the 1970s, and it's still an iconic fragrance that many people can identify and reference today. it's so inspiring looking at all these fragrances and identifying the impact, looking at the backstory, learning about the history of these fragrances, and seeing how that trickles down into what we see in the perfume industry today. Thank you so much for listening to tonight's podcast. I do hope you enjoyed it and found it interesting, and I will see you next time. Bye. This episode's music was brought to you by Kevin McLeod over at Incompetech. This is Beauty Flow by Kevin McLeod at Incompetech.com and is licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license.